My name's Tim Hink. I'm a multimedia, kind of interdisciplinary artist. I work primarily in the field of sound, in musical composition. But what I'm really interested in is kind of work that bridges between my primary discipline and other artistic pursuits. So I'm interested in the intersection between sound and light, atmospheres, places, locations, people's memories and their experiences. So my work is really trying to find out what it means to be human, what the human experience is, and what that means for an audience member as an individual.
My name is Paul Rutherford, and I'm the Associate Director of Prospect Management and Analytics at Santa Clara University. Zeitgeist Intelligence itself it came out of work that I was doing around helping artists kind of land into mainstream notoriety. Left college and I was working with a bunch of guys who were trying to make a name for themselves in this whole field that's super critical of up and coming talent.
Basically, my relationship with Pavel was because we both shared an interest in work that was outside of conventional art. I was working on a piece called I Wrote It on Your Chest. It was a piano concerto in 42 movements. And just to try to find kind of what my limits were as a composer in relationship to interdisciplinary work. How far outside the realm of writing notes on a paper could I get?
At the core of this project was this question, like, what exactly are you providing the public? Like, what are they consuming? And how do you present it in a way that it makes sense? Because it's already intimidating to begin with. And so that led me to, each artist has to run with a campaign. They have to campaign and broadcast what they're doing in a way that's bite-sized for the public.
In just chatting with Pavel about that piece, I think our kind of line of thinking was kind of similar, and the things that we were interested in and what seemed to be pertinent at the time. The piece was something that I feel is still very important because it explored the idea of not having an audience that I performed for, but to have a very small, intimate audience that I experienced the performance with.
Well, I realized there was a similarity between what the artist does every day to feed themselves and what a university or a commercial campaign has to do. They have to make what they're doing so plain and simple, right, to their prospective audience or to their customer base, so much so that it turns into a call to action, right? It galvanizes them to either purchase the good, support the cause, or show up at that art performance, right?
Not only was it important, I think, for setting up a new kind of way of experiencing art and performing art for me, but it was also very timely because I think people were and still are looking for that kind of immediacy, a surprise, an element of surprise, and a kind of an adventure. There's unusual things to see and to hear and experience, but also what you're seeing and experiencing is something that's just for you.
That's where Zeitgeist Intelligence is born, right? Because at the end of the day, we had to figure out what core values or what core themes existed within this campaign or brand, if you will. Working in prospect research and prospect development, you understand that every day you're supporting a campaign. That doesn't really matter to anyone unless it ties into their core values, unless you can actually explain that. And we figured, well, why don't we derive or come up with the zeitgeist of that mission? So Zeitgeist Intelligence, it's a term I coined with Matthias Trevisano, the CEO of Grand Data, a company that launched out of MIT's Hemodynamics Lab. Really phenomenal work around human mobility and its relevance to purchase patterns, areas of importance, where people flock to after a soccer game was one of the examples they had. And he coined the term zeitgeist because he's like, well, if you can figure out what someone's values look like, then it's, as the term suggests, it's a representation of culmination of everything that matters to them, like immaterially, in a space of time. And that's essentially what Zeitgeist is. The intelligence component of it is understanding that interaction between zeitgeists.
So I'm Sharice Harrison, the Senior Director of Prospect Management and Analytics at Santa Clara University. And how I became involved with Zeitgeist Intelligence. A little over a year ago, I had an opening on my team. Pavel applied for it. And during our first phone interview, during the conversation, we really talked about annual fund, lead annual, because those are the groups that he would be assigned to, and to see what new and innovative ideas that he may have had concerning this. And one of my ideas that I shared with him was to create donor personas of who are these people that we want to get into the pipeline, first with lead annual and annual fund, but potentially move them up to major giving to figure out who exactly do we target.
My name is Patricia Salazar. I work for Santa Clara University, and I am the Director of Leadership Annual Giving. Typically, major gifts teams really focus on those high-end donors, the folks whose gifts can really contribute to a capital campaign. They invest a lot of time in a very specific constituency, whereas an annual giving team really deals with the masses. So the question that we had was, what do we do with those folks in the middle, those folks that aren't necessarily at the major gift level yet, but need more cultivation than just an annual touch or a transactional gift from year to year. We wanted to start making those transformational gifts and hopefully set them up to be a major gift prospect eventually.
We are on a mission to make a difference.
Now is the time for Santa Clara to be recognized across the nation and around the world.
This is our mission.
So the founding of the 1851 League, I remember shortly before Pavel started, Patricia was the new director of lead annual giving. It was a brand new group within Santa Clara Advancement, with taking a look at individuals who can give between $1,000 and $25,000. Great idea. And one of the first things she said to me was, I just don't want to be a regular fundraiser. I don't want to fundraise like everyone else. I have all these ideas and I just need your help to really bring them to fruition. And one of those things was, I want to create a network of people. We have this own special group that we can work with them to bring other people into the pipeline, bring them into the university to become more engaged, whether they're sitting on boards, whether they attend events. But we're going to use this core group of people to reach others.
So one of the unique things about the 1851 League is because these folks are so philanthropic and they're so social, that typically they have a spot that they like to give to. And so it's our job, and with the knowledge that we have from the PMA team, we're empowered to dig deeper into that area of passion for each donor. And with that, we can bring them together and they can kind of share those stories, but also come up with ways on how to inspire other people who might have the same passions or might just have a passion for Santa Clara in general. But also go back and just share that, like, this is the impact that we're making. And we really want to empower them to do that. We want them to really feel like they're a society that can make a difference, but that they don't have to just give to one spot on campus, because we want to make sure that each donor feels like their gifts to Santa Clara are going to affect a place that they are passionate about. And we worked with our prospect management and analytics team in order to identify who those folks were and the best ways to reach out to them.
My name is Frankie Bastone. I work at Santa Clara University as the Assistant Director of Leadership Annual Giving. Millennials is a big cohort of our donor base. It spans from the 90s up into the early 2000s and a little bit past that. Is a group of thousands of individuals, and we need to treat them as such individually to develop the trust, because as a millennial myself, I can tell you that we expect it. And it's important to us to have that connection with another individual, to trust them, to trust the institution that they're being communicated from. And it's not enough anymore to just operate under the assumption that I went to X university or college, and so I should give back. I should be engaged, or I should open my email. We need to actively show them that them opening that email or coming to an event is making an impact, is doing good, and is supporting something meaningful to them. So millennials are smart. We know when you're going to call. We know when you're going to send an email. We know, when you're going to send us a piece in the mail. A lot of millennials don't update their contact information. They keep their address to their parents' house. They don't answer the phone. They create a fake email account that filters all emails from their institution into it, so they don't have to open it. So reaching this group is becoming harder and harder because they want to hear from causes that are important to them. And if your institution isn't on the top 5 list, then it'll probably be lost in the white noise of the current day and age. But texting is not a normal communication tool for higher education, for nonprofits, and probably for any business. Texting obviously goes straight to you within a matter of seconds. It's personal, it's short, it fits in your coffee break or you're at lunch. You could be receiving a text from myself or Patricia from Santa Clara just as a quick check-in and seeing how you are. At the beginning, there was a lot of, focus on that because it was so different and so new and, not a normal, what we would call as fundraisers, a fundraising tactic. So tried that. Our first one was, a super simple, hey, do you have any advice for the graduating class of 2019? Sent 10,000 of them within a couple weeks. And we had over a 60% response rate, with some people responded with like a 1 sentence, some did paragraphs, some wanted to send a note after they texted back. So it engaged a lot of individuals from 1 year out to 50 years out plus. So I think an important piece of it is, who you're sending to, and taking the 10 minutes of really diving into who's going to receive this and knowing their giving history, what's the last event they attended. So kind of like ranking them, how they are as an alum or as a donor. And we're better able to prepare and make a plan for that individual to move them from, an annual giving donor to a lead annual giving donor, with the goal to major gift, principal gift. So we're able to capture a simple word and put it into an action immediately and 5-10 years down the line.
So natural language processing was crucial to this because it's essentially the analysis of speech patterns within a network. What is being said? What value does it have, either positive or negative or neutral? As well as looking at where a person in a network, their influence, right? What role that plays in what they say and how other people are influenced by this thought leader in their speech. But understanding on a very basic level, the polarity in someone's speech can help determine their preferences. And so NLP helps mitigate that, helps uncover a lot of what is actually being said or inferred in a conversation. And so with 1851 League, when you have a lot of people discussing a campaign or a set topic or even a theme, you could infer what matters the most about that theme, but also who within that network views it as important.
My name is Adarsh Salapaka, and I work as a student assistant, a student worker at Santa Clara University. And I'm on this project to assist from the data point of view. Yeah, the essential idea behind this entire project is natural language processing, to understand what the text behind or what the essential essence or emotion of these texts, comments coming in from these millennials mean. Kind of create a visual aspect about the emotions and infer from them, from data, what do they want, the issues about which they care the most, and things that they like the most about campaigns which they are most interested in. It's a complex process, but with the technology and data we have today, and the psycholinguistics that we have today, the sociology, things that we are reading about today, it is possible in near future to actually describe what a person is made of, the values that they have. We can use NLP and machine learning in a way which gives them the most valuable, products and services right in front of them. Those are the things that they most chime with, and those are the things that they will be more interested in using and preaching others to use as well.
Yeah, a lot of this research comes out of work done by Pierre Bourdieu, the famous French sociologist. And so what he was able to do primarily was to coin a term known as habitus. Habitus is essentially, inferentially speaking, it's how you can determine the social standing of an individual based on their speech, purchase patterns, mannerisms, everything, let's say, subliminal about that person is known as their habitus. The work is so significant because it adds a scientific underpinning to the analysis of, let's say, class mobility. It looks at hundreds of years of what we've done to make lives better for ourselves or to be seen in a better light in society. And that's significant because if there's a hierarchy, that means that infers there are separate roles and responsibilities at each rung of the ladder. And that's important for any campaign because you can't just say, all we need is for people to give us money to fund the campaign. There's a lot more that goes into it. You mentioned 3 things. You need people to spread the word. You need people to give it a sense of legitimacy, to endorse it to the extent that it's seen as something worth their time as a worthy cause. And the third is, it's essential for it to be funded. The third is also very significant because it also entails this idea of canon. There is a canon of great art at the end of the day. And there's a canon of, there are set guidelines that determine whether something is worthy of your time or not, given historical context, given the zeitgeist of that cause or that campaign in time. And so when we look at this opportunity we had at Santa Clara to pretty much support a platform of young alumni or millennials interacting with each other and the brand, their alma mater itself, it made total sense. This is kind of that test space to validate this concept. And honestly, just to make sense out of what that target segment or that market segment cares about. How do you connect someone to some messaging that probably takes place in a boardroom and is disconnected from the public? And then ultimately, an alma mater is kind of the strongest brand that you experience, or that's a part of your life right after you leave home. It has the most staying power. And so if we can understand the affinity between millennials and their alma mater, then we can ultimately understand how people connect with a brand, right?
So to talk a little bit about specifically resonance and affinity as it comes down to the nonprofit space. And from my experience, I've been in prospect development for, at this point, about 17 years. And I've been doing data science for maybe about the past 7 or 8 years. And really thinking about how do we get to what the affinity is. There are a lot of affinity models out there, there are a lot of affinity scores, but they don't really tell you about resonance, what really resonates with a potential prospect or a potential donor. And thinking about Zeitgeist Intelligence, it really tells you what people care about. And what they care about can be translated into dollars for your organization. From my perspective in working in the industry, I've never seen that connection very thoroughly made. Again, there are a lot of great models out there, but it's very broad and it's not necessarily specific when it comes to huge groups. And I know saying something specific for huge groups sounds very counterintuitive, but when you're thinking about donor personas or individuals within a group, you do have to understand those individuals. And Zeitgeist Intelligence actually does that. And with this particular project of understanding millennials, this is a group, especially with lead annual and annual, that people in prospect development don't always work with. And to understand that group, to get them to the point of being major donors is very important. Fundraisers spend years and years trying to figure out what's meaningful so that they know what the ask should be. And with this, we're breaking it down into a very data-centered way of understanding what do people really care about? And then how do we target that?
As an undergrad, you develop an identity on campus, and that's your passion. It's your story of being an undergrad at an institution. And after you graduate, that's what you become known as in a data sense. We know what you were involved in. We know, who you've interacted with. We know what kind of communications you get, but it doesn't capture how or who you respond to. So it takes some time to learn if you respond to emails. It takes some time to learn if you're a texter, if you take 3 weeks to reply to an email. So from the beginning, it's important to have the right setup where we can capture and learn from and strategize from different efforts from different people to know the individual in their entirety. Because at the end of the day, we want the ownership of an alum's journey to be with that alum. It shouldn't be coming from myself. It shouldn't be coming from the university pushing you towards an agenda. It should come from the alum. They should be able to respond to what they want to, and we should be able to learn from that and adapt to that, and put the information out there that they want to know, so they can have a stronger, more positive connection that, you know, pushes them forward, pushes us forward, and makes the community that much stronger.
When it comes down to corporations and even nonprofits with sharing what their values are, there's been a shift in philanthropy in general and in human beings in general about what do you value? People are no longer willing to separate the company from the product. People care more about how they feel about things. And I think that has a lot to do with our news cycle, our politics, where what you care about is a part of you. It's no longer something that's maybe outside of you, or you think about it differently than you think about yourself. So if you are going to engage with a company or a product, or even engage with a nonprofit organization, it has to be something that is reflective of you. And I think this also has come about because of the millennial generation, with really thinking about what is important. How do we view the world? And the world has become very, very small concerning that particular generation because of social media and things of that nature. So we're exposed to so much more now. And if we see things that come from a company or a nonprofit that do not resonate with us, then we can definitely take our business elsewhere. But as a company or a nonprofit, we want to ensure that our values align with those potential prospects that we have to get them into our funding pipeline.
So what we are also looking at is, in future, let's say I'm walking down the road and, with all the tech that's present today, my zeitgeist is something like my social or something that travels with me, is my identity. And I can use it as an identification that I have, which is separate from me, but also a part of me. The emotional essence that I carry with myself. My zeitgeist can be used by other people to provide me the products and services that are most inclined towards my liking. It's the essence of who I am, and and it should benefit me how corporations should take me on as a consumer with things that I like the most, and not the things that they want to market it to me. It should be things that I like the most, and it should be things that I care about the most. So it should be completely secure. It should be completely personalized. It should be thoughtful at the end of the day, and it should be things that I care about the most.
What that looks like if you're using a linear way of rating either entity. So a restaurant, there's a restaurant that is, it's given a Michelin star or 2, or it has a 5-star rating. Well, that doesn't really say much if you don't like French cuisine, right? Like, it's not 5 stars to you, it's half a star. But if that same restaurant, Atelier Le Crane, for example, a spot that has like some historical value, and it's also playing with the concept of modern French cuisine within a California or West Coast context, well, that's interesting. There's something intellectual about that. If the experience is highly engaging, well, that's a value type that might matter to me and other people, apart from just eating a stodgy meal in a dark setting, right? So when you start unpackaging what the experience looks like, you understand that there are broader themes that come to play. And if you can create a visual representation of those themes, or value cores as we call them, then you can truly see what it is that you'd be experiencing. You could see the zeitgeist, right? It's context and time in a quote unquote spiritual sense. And so since everyone, we believe, has a set of values that guide them, then why not visualize that or make it clear to everyone the values or the zeitgeist of every other object they interact with, just to make for a more meaningful and clear pathway to the things that give you joy or bring resonance of thinking or way of being. And that's the whole point of this. It's to create a landscape, a clear and open landscape that, one, is more engaging, but also facilitates resonance with the things that actually matter. This is why it was so significant to work with an artist operating in a space that's so intangible, that is just pure, raw value. It shows you, one, that this concept works, and two, it makes it a lot easier to work with a simple campaign like innovation with a mission, which, by the way, there's a lot to unpack there. Mission being signifying the mission that Santa Clara University was at the time in 1851, right? And Jesuit tradition, etc. There's a lot to unpack there. But going with something as ephemeral and philosophical as an art form is the best place to start.
Right now, things have to become a lot more personal, a lot smaller scale. And that's something that's been important in my work for 10 plus years is this idea of scaling down, of removing barriers between myself and the audience, of making it more of a shared experience, and to see how I can do that and still make a living as an artist. That's kind of the tricky part. 5 stars, thumbs up, thumbs down will not work. There has to be a coherent journey that has been traveled before, because you've gotten down to the raw version of what that brand symbolizes. And if you can do that for the individual, as well as the brand itself, you figured it out. It's all you need. The reason that art is really important right now is because it can tell us things about ourselves and our experience. Art is only really important in terms of its relationship to other pieces of art, to other times, and to other people's experiences. I don't think that art can stand alone as an individual piece. I think art is in constant conversation with art that's come before it and art that's going to come after it. I think art is in conversation with both the artist and the audience, you know, the person who's viewing or receiving the work. And so I think that art's important because it completes the circuit of communication between someone who has an idea and someone who has had a similar or differing idea. And art is that bridge between two ideas, you know, and it brings meaning to ideas.